Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes, and I'd love to welcome here Ben Neill, who is an author, a composer, and a musician, and you've created a mutant trumpet.
That's right. Yes, I have my own invented instrument that I've been using for several decades as my primary vehicle for my music. Yeah.
Awesome. And you create art music.
Well, um, I guess you could say that. Yeah, I've done a lot of different kinds of things. There was a quote from Wired magazine that I liked that said, "I did art music for the people," but I've mostly worked in the electronica realm of ambient techno, drum and bass, trip hop, that kind of scenario. I've done some things that are a bit more in the contemporary classical realm too, but those electronica and grooves-based ambient sort of chill out music is what I'm best known for.
What did you grow up listening to?
Well, a lot of different things. I studied classical trumpet, from a pretty early age, but I was really into a lot of the art rock of David Bowie, Brian Eno, Todd Rundgren,
Oh, yeah.
and also Miles Davis's electric music, all of his albums from the '70s and that kind of thing, and then some also more really experimental kind of avant-garde stuff too. So I had pretty wide-ranging musical tastes, but I would say probably the music that I was most passionate about was the art rock of people like Bowie. Yeah.
And your book is called Diffusing Music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all about how music is becoming more and more democratized and more participatory, something that more and more people are getting involved in, and how that changes the whole landscape of being a musician today.
Well, doesn't it make it more difficult with all these streaming services to actually make it into music nowadays?
It absolutely does. It really changes the whole dynamic of it. And I look at a lot of the new tools that are making it so much easier for people to create their own music. And I also look at the historical trajectories that I feel led to this revolution that we're living through. Many people think that it's just because of the new technologies and AI and these very new things that we find ourselves in this situation. But I point out how, for decades, a lot of different kinds of artists have been pointing toward this idea of music becoming something that's more and more participatory and doesn't require specialized training or anything. But now we see, with, as you mentioned, the streaming services, the fact that there's 120,000 songs a day released, and it would take you a year to listen to all the music that's released in one day. We have to recognize that that really changes the whole nature of it. And I think some artists are really starting to respond to that and come up with new ways of creating that incorporate that kind of interactivity and participation.
Well, a lot of this music that, especially your hip hop and rap, they take music that's already been created and they'll put a beat to it and scratch and all that other stuff. I don't know a whole lot about that genre of music, but they're in a way, I guess, piggybacking off of these folks. Now, I get it. My generation, they redid a lot of songs and everything, but they put their own spin to it, that kind of thing. But I don't know. To me, with some of it, I would say, like with the Aerosmith and Run DMC,
Hmm.
that rejuvenated Aerosmith, but they did participate together, and it wasn't a carbon copy of the original song. But I don't know, something's just missing
Right.
to me.
I think it's interesting that you bring up sampling, and it's one of the things that I talk about in my book is that I think over the years, really over for the last 100 years, every technological innovation that's been introduced into music has been met with great fear and resistance, going back to recorded music, radio, literally every technology. Musicians were afraid that it was going to encroach on their livelihood and the art form. And I think sampling was one of the ones that really shook everything up. But it seems like, and I think we're living through maybe a more radical version of that right now, with artificial intelligence
Mhm.
becoming more and more involved in music. But I think the kinds of things that tended to rise to the top with sampling were the people who used it in a way that was more inventive and had more of a human touch to it. Just as you say, I would agree. Just sticking somebody else's full song on top of your track, it's not so interesting. But I think of some of the records, for instance, like the one that just comes to mind, DJ Shadow's Introducing from the 90s, which was this very rich kind of collage of all these different samples. And some of the newer artists, like I talk about in my book, like Kutiman, who takes all these samples of people playing on YouTube, playing by themselves, and then knits them all together into a kind of collage that makes a new kind of sense. I do think, just like anything, it can be more creative or less creative depending on who's doing it. I'm not sure the technology itself really is inherently bad in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, true. You see how technology has changed in music from the 50s on up, and some of it has really brought out creativity, whereas some of it's almost soulless to me. You take an artist like Frank Zappa,
Yeah.
who, I mean, he used some of that technology and created things you've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And, but that was creativity, that was art. And
Yeah. I hear what you mean. I mean, Zappa's an interesting example of somebody who really was able to move around from, he wrote orchestral music. I mean, he did, many different kinds of things. But I think the things that really made him be more recognized were when he dared to move into these more controversial kinds of subject matter and shocking, things that were kind of shocking. Yeah, I mean, he was obviously a fascinating character. I think there's a new documentary out about him. I saw advertised. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but his autobiography was really interesting. Yeah, so or
oh,
biography. Yeah, yeah,
anything about Zappa, I'd love to either read it or watch it, you know?
yeah, yeah,
But whereas some people have taken the new technology and actually are creating something, some folks, like some of the soundscapes, okay, they have programmed music, it's already in a keyboard, and then they might just get in and put their own little tune to it, but it doesn't have that soul. You know what I
I hear
mean?
what you're saying. Well, I mean, again, one of the things that I talk about in my book is over the years, and particularly with the way that people are listening to music, with the accessibility of music now, music is becoming more and more about the listener, more and more about the audience, and less about the artist. And the streaming services really want us to listen to music in terms of it being useful, background music for whatever it is, cooking or making out or exercising, and these algorithmic playlists, which have many different artists all mixed up together. People listen to these things, and of course, the Spotify curated playlists are the most sought after playlists, which have by far the most listeners. But most people who are listening to those things, they don't even know who the artists are and don't really care. And that's kind of the way that music is changing, is that it's becoming more and more something that people use in a sort of utilitarian way. Is that a good thing? Well, it's different. It is very different, and different genres of music tend to lend themselves more to that, I think. But again, what I'm trying to point up in my book is that musicians now cannot ignore these changes, and it's very difficult for these technologies to be reversed, or to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. We've seen that over and over again. So we have to try to adapt to them, and with AI and a lot of these new systems that are coming out like practically every day, I think it's important for people to look at these things, try to see what potential they have, and embrace them early on, because oftentimes that's the way the future gets shaped, is by the people who are the early adopters of these things, that kind of lead the way for how people will use them in the future. So it's a very transformative time right now in music, and I mean, we've already seen such tremendous change over the last couple of decades, but it's still very much in flux.
Back to the streaming services, that catch 22 is, I love the fact that I can get a service like Spotify, create me a playlist, and then while I'm cleaning house or what have you, I can have that playing in the background. I don't have to worry about turning the record over, or
Yeah.
or the cassette tape or anything like that. But at the same time, being that I've talked to a lot of those artists that I grew up with, that they they have to stay on tour and try to get that merchandise out there, because they're getting literally pennies for this music that they've created. And if they put out something new, it's even harder to make money off of it unless you are touring and you've got merchandise.
And even that, I mean, live performance is, if you look at the numbers of live performance, it's the revenues have gone up, but a lot of that is driven by the very top of the market, and the fact that concert tickets for the really popular, mostly legacy artists, are through the roof. I mean, it's that's really what's driving the revenue in live music. I mean, it's hard to make money in live music if you can't play to 800 or 1,000 people a night, and that's not so easy to do. So yeah, it is really challenging. I think some of the things that I see on the horizon are artists coming up with ways to have people participate in their musical creativity more. I talk about in my book, there are these things called distributed autonomous organizations, DAOs, that are basically like collectives, where artists are creating collectives. Obviously, we have all kinds of different subscription services and things like that. But opening up the creative process to the audience and letting them actually participate in it. I talk about Brian Eno a lot in my book, and one of the quotes that he made, going back even to the 90s, is that eventually all music might become more participatory, to the point where people wouldn't really necessarily listen to fixed recordings that much anymore. And so that the whole thing, it's almost like to engage people in the way that people used to listen to music, to just like sit down and listen to a record from start to finish without doing anything else. It almost may need to go more in the direction of gaming, where people have some kind of engagement with it, that they're actually involved in remixing it or changing it or something like that. And we do see examples of that. I talk about some of those people in my book that are, so the whole, it's like the whole, that's the title, diffusing music. So it's just music becomes more and more integrated into the fabric of everyone's life, and it's not something that is limited to just the experts anymore. It's something that everyone can participate in, and of course, that does have an impact on the economics of it for sure. Yeah.
So do you have your trumpet with you?
Yeah, I actually have it sitting right here. I could. Uh, yeah. So this is the Mutant Trumpet. You can see it has the three bells instead of the normal single bell. The one bell is actually on a small trombone slide, so I can do a glissando, and then these are all different MIDI switches, joysticks up here. There's a distance sensor. So there's a pickup in the mouthpiece so that my notes and dynamics can be turned into digital information. And basically, it's a hybrid acoustic and electronic instrument. And this is the fourth one that I've made, and it's as I mentioned at the beginning, it's really been the mainstay of my creative work, going back to the 1980s when I started working on it with Robert Moog, the synthesizer inventor.
Oh, wow, wow. That is so cool. I feel bad for the people that are listening to the audio portion of this. I wish you could see what we're seeing. It looks like you
Well,
got a Rubik's Cube on the side of it.
yeah. It does look a little bit like that. It wasn't really intentional, but a number of people have pointed. I just made them different colors so it helps me keep track of which button does what. But if people are interested, there are several demos on my website and my YouTube channel that people can look at, and where I go into some detail about how I use it in my different pieces.
You have a lot of people seek you out for that?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. The demos have definitely gotten a lot of interest. I feel like that's, again, sort of part of the new landscape of music. I think people are more interested in technology than music now,
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, I've been a professor of music technology and music business for a couple of decades, and I've really cut back on that now. So I'm devoting more time to this book came out in December, and I'm going to start releasing tracks for building up to a new album in the next month. And so, yeah, hopefully be getting out and performing more and doing more things like that. I also have developed some software for my instrument that is a live sampling system that is it's really unique. I mean, there's nothing on the market that does what it does. And people over the years have asked me, "Oh, do you want to sell the Mutant Trumpet? Are you going to, manufacture it or anything?" And it was always something that was very personal to me. But now that I have this software that it's a series of plugins for Ableton Live, I am considering starting to distribute those. And I think, again, that's another way that musical artists may start to work a little bit differently in terms of not only creating their own music, but creating their own tools, which will then have an influence on other creators. And that's something that I'm interested in going forward. I haven't totally worked it out yet, but I'm thinking about doing that this year.
Do you have a website?
Yes, it's just my name, benneill.com, Benneill, two L's. Yeah, and you can see videos and hear the music. I have 14 albums out on Spotify and all the other streaming services. So, yeah.
And can people get your book like on Amazon?
Yeah, no, it's distributed everywhere. I mean, it's published by Bloomsbury Academic Press, and right now it's only available in hardcover. So it's quite expensive, but it will be coming out in paperback in the next few months. So the price will come down. But it's out there. I have a discount code that I can share with you that you could also put in your comments if that helps a little bit. So, yeah.
Well, I'll definitely put all your links in the description.
Great.
But Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thank you. It's a real pleasure to talk with you. Yeah. All right.
I also like to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, and peace.